Welcome back to the CTO Playbook. There's a line Miguel Carranza uses to describe how he hires. The worst person at RevenueCat has already been hired. He says it almost matter-of-factly. For him, it's the foundation of how the company is built. Miguel is co-founder and CTO of RevenueCat, the platform that handles in-app subscriptions for tens of thousands of mobile apps, including some you almost certainly use every week. In this conversation, you'll hear why management was never the goal for one of the most distinctive engineering leaders working today, what an office of the CTO actually does, and the question every founder CTO eventually has to answer. When do you stop being the person with all the answers and start being the one who asks better questions? I'm Adam Horner. I coach CTOs through exactly this transition at thectoplaybook.com. Let's meet Miguel. Miguel, welcome to the CTO Playbook.
Thank you very much for having me here, Adam.
Oh, it's a good time. Since we had a last chat, I've been looking forward to this one because as somebody who's moved from Europe to the US, albeit quite a while ago now, I find it interesting to see, exactly where you are. So one of the things I wanted to do start off with then is sort of start off with who you are, what you've done, because I think most people probably recognize what you've done, but not necessarily know the name.
Yeah, so I am originally from Sevilla, the south of Spain. I got my first computer when I was 8 and I fell in love. So I wanted to do computers for the rest of my life pretty much. And I learned about Silicon Valley, which was the place to be, I guess. Yeah, studied computer science in my hometown. Then I briefly took a master's degree in the UK. And right after that, I went to Silicon Valley and worked in startups. And then at some point, we faced a problem around subscriptions, a mobile subscription for mobile apps in the App Store, the Play Store. We decided that problem needed to be solved. My co-founder and I started RevenueCat as a company. Yeah, he's still the CEO. I'm the CTO, whatever that means. Yeah, I guess the journey, we've been doing this for 8 years now or so. Started officially, the first lines of code were in the end of August, September 2017. But officially, it became like a company and we went through Y Combinator in 2018 and started hiring people and making it like a real company. Yeah, I've been doing like all the things you're supposed to do as a CTO, I guess, from being the main contributor to the code base to also talking with customers, hiring, starting building a team, doing a little bit of light management, then hiring managers, making mistakes along the way, and building the org as the company grows.
And that's because, that path that so many of us have walked. Did you have any idea what you're getting yourself in for when you became a CTO at the beginning?
Absolutely not. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it, for sure. No. I mean, I think it's one of those things that you obviously believe, but it's one of those things that you are like, okay, well, I'm doing what I enjoy doing right now, which is a 0 to 1. And then if it goes poorly, I guess it's under my control and it's my responsibility. If it goes really well, then it's a good problem to have. And then I'll figure it out whether we hire people or I learn the skill set. And then you realize it's actually a combination of both, right? You need to both keep growing, but also hiring better people than you as much as you can.
And that's something we'll talk about more, I think, because it's one of those interesting topics. But before we get to that, I sort of stopped my tracks when he said that you got your first computer at 8 years old and you pretty much at that point what you wanted to do. Because when at 8 years old, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was at sort of school in 15, 16 and sort of realized, hang on, I'm fixing other people's computers. So, I mean, what was it about the computer at 8 years old that got you to the point where it's like, that's what I'm going to do?
Honestly, I think it was probably due to the fact that when I went to elementary school, all my kids had Game Boys or the Mega Drive or Super Nintendos or whatever. And I was like, I asked my parents for video games and they were like, no, you're not going to get video games because you're going to get blind. You're going to get so hooked that it's not good for you. However, if you do well, when you grow up, you'll get a computer, right? So that was it. I got my first computer and then I was so anxious about it that I tried to learn as much as possible. I opened it up to figure out what was inside that box.
So you did the whole taking it apart thing to figure out what made it tick.
So it was both the software and the hardware part of it. Again, obviously games too, but it wasn't like the main thing.
Yeah, the first view of the internet, I still remember that as well. That was quite something.
Yeah.
So but that was all from when you were in Sevilla, in Spain?
Yeah. Which is funny too, because there was like, I didn't know anybody or didn't know many people that were into computers too. Like then you end up, there was like another kid in my neighborhood who ended up coming to Silicon Valley with me, but that was it. Like there was not that many people.
Wow. So the rest had, Game Boys and Sega.
Yeah, or more focus on
that, but games, not really real computers.
Yeah, more focus on the video games. And I think also that was another thing. I guess when I kind of similar experience when I got into university, I actually was very underwhelmed and disappointed because I was like, okay, this is where I'm gonna meet the people that have the same hobbies on me, and I'm gonna learn a lot. And the reality is that most of the actual friends and some of the people that I actually hired from school, I didn't necessarily meet them at the university. I met them outside doing somewhere else, because there's a lot of people that just got in because they didn't know what to do, and it sounded, oh, computers sound good, and there's a lot of jobs and they are well paid, so maybe this is what I want to do. And then when even my wife, that's how I met my wife, and that's what she did. She liked computers a little bit, but when she started seeing all the math and the programming and how it was taught at the university, she was like, oh, there's no way I'm doing this for 5 years.
So completely put off by it then at that point.
Yeah.
Wow. So then it was at some point, because you once you were in the US, you were working on Elevate, weren't you? Which was one of the apps of the year. So tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so what happened, I interviewed while I was in the UK at several different companies, and there was this one that was a small startup that was doing educational games for the App Store. I liked it a lot. It was not a very big team, and everybody was super talented. So it was like, okay, this is the one. It's great. I think it was like 12, 14 people.
So very early in then.
So what happened was that my visa had to be processed. When I landed in San Francisco, they were already like 45 people because they had raised money and they had grown. So it was a good learning experience to me too, to see how startups change really, really fast. And sometimes and even if you hire, that was another lesson that I learned, is that even if you hire really great people, that doesn't necessarily mean that those people are going to work well together or are going to be motivated the same way. And it might actually not be that great that you hire that many people that fast. But anyway, we were Duolingo before Duolingo existed. It was a language learning app using minigames. But then when Duolingo came up, well, we needed to pivot essentially, because Duolingo was much better product and was available on iOS and Android. So we started building something new that ended up becoming Elevate. And I remember those days, those were really fun, because there's a lot of people that left because they didn't believe or they didn't want to start a new product. And to me, it was like, okay, this is why I really came to Silicon Valley, to learn to build something from scratch with very talented people. And if it goes well, it's going to be great. If it doesn't go that well, doesn't matter. It's going to be a great learning experience. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And we were lucky enough that we built a good product that people liked and ended up becoming App of the Year. And at the same time, that's how we learned about mobile subscriptions, because back in the day, most of the apps were like one-time purchase. And this one, we really needed to make it a subscription, because we were adding new minigames and new content every month that was very expensive to build. So that was like, okay, we have a product that has saved the company, but we need now a business model that can save the company. And we learned a lot, and we realized that even though it wasn't rocket science, it was a lot more complicated than we thought it was going to be, because one-time purchase is very easy. You just purchase, like the purchase goes through or doesn't go through, but that's it. You unlock the content and you have it forever. But when it's recurring and there's billing issues, and then maybe you subscribe on Android and then you buy an iPad or whatever, you have to make sure that cross-platform is there, and then you start seeing all the edge cases, because the App Store were never built thinking about subscriptions at the beginning. So it's kind of a legacy system that wasn't, the APIs were not that developer friendly, and obviously they're different on iOS and Android. And then if you want to sell on the web too, it adds a lot of complexity. There's no real-time webhooks or anything like that back in the day. So there's a lot of infrastructure that we need to build on top of that.
Well, so you, through all of that, were an individual contributor, so you weren't actually leading any teams at this point, were you? Or were you?
No, not really. At some point, my co-founder Jacob and I were the most senior people at the company. And then he left, so I took his role for a while. I was officially director of engineering, so engineering reported into me. There was no CTO or VP of engineering or anything like that. And that was, I never asked for that, but it was a good experience for me to learn a little bit more about the team building and the company building and realizing like, oh, this is actually not what I love doing or what I'm great at. At that point, I knew that I wasn't going to learn that much in terms of the technical knowledge because there was nobody that I could learn from. So it was a good opportunity for me to learn how to hire, do some mentorship, and learn about the business too, because I think that's one of the other things that make a great engineer that people underestimate is the fact that at some point it's not only the technical ability, it's also the understanding of the customers and the business. And that was a very good opportunity for me to get closer to that.
Indeed. I mean, it's a fairly critical part of most businesses, would say, by actually getting the money in the door. And at the end of the day, that's what revenue management is all about.
Right.
So, I mean, something that you said in our first conversation, is stay with me though. So you told me that you were never really interested in management, and that for a long time you sort of questioned whether you're doing a good job as a CTO. It'd be sort of interesting to start there, because I know we're sort of moving on a little bit from that to RevenueCat, but I think the transition is fairly clear to see from there. But what was it about management that you sort of thought, nah, that's not for me?
Well, I mean, I think I got into computers because I like computers. Well, I don't want to say more than people, but kind of. I think one of the things that I'm trying to make the connection, but it's not anymore. I think that the thing that you like about the computer is that they used to be, not anymore with AI, but they used to be very deterministic, very logical. So that was the interesting part of it. Is like if something was broken, there was a reason why it was broken. It wasn't magic. And maybe it's hard for you to understand, and you need to debug a little bit deeper. But it's usually one mistake, or you told the computer how to do it incorrectly. With people, though, it's a lot more complicated. There's a lot of more things. I'm not saying it could be a more powerful or more imperfect machine. I don't know, but there's feelings, and humans behave different ways. Sometimes they're a lot more motivated, or they're motivated by different reasons. So you need to understand that really well. And yeah, again, the whole management thing has been very interesting to me, because also at the same time, I've realized over the years that the best managers that I've hired or that I have worked with, the ones that never wanted to be managers in the first place. And because they had the technical depth, and they did it because there was one moment in time that the biggest problem was the team or the delivery or something related to the team management, and somebody had to step up, and they did it, and they hated it, but after a while they got a little bit better, and they realized that that was the biggest thing that they could do for the company or the team. And that's kind of the same case for me. And it's hard because you find somebody that is a great engineer, but also could be a better manager, and they don't want to do it because, let's face it, the bad parts of the job sucks, like hiring, firing, performance management, that nobody wants to do that. But then you need to convince them, and they need to see by themselves that those actions make the whole team and company better, and everybody grows. However, the people that just want to do management because they're like, oh, I actually don't like writing code, or I actually don't like computers that much, but I like being the boss, those are the ones that usually don't work, especially if you're building a very technical product.
Right. So the more technical the product, the more technical the leadership needs to be as well then.
Totally. And
in terms of, the kind of the moments that you went through, was there a particular moment that you went through where, whether it was a co-founder, an investor, even one of your leaders, sort of held up a mirror to you and you realized you needed to think differently about leadership?
I mean, it's I guess it's how the company evolves, right? Like at the beginning, there's not that many people. It's very flat. You're not hiring that frequently. But there's a point in which you have like 4, 6, 8, 10 engineers. Things start to break a little bit more. You need a little bit more organization. You're even might be thinking, oh, we need to split it into different teams, or we need to even do a little bit of org design. And at that point is when, it was very clear to me that with my background, I was pretty good about detecting who was going to be a good engineer and doing the hiring processes for those, but I wasn't that experienced. I felt that I wasn't a great manager, and at the same time, okay, I need to hire a great manager. That's not, chances of success are probably not that high. So you need to do the job yourself and learn what you are good at and what you're not that good at. Figure out what are the type of skill sets or traits that you want from the person that you're going to hire. So I ended up doing a lot more of that. One of my early employees told me something that was actually very eye-opening, that I never thought it that way. It was like, you are actually a pretty good manager because you really care. And that's sometimes with you have an external manager or you're working at a big organization, your manager just wants to take advantage of your work. In this case, since you're a founder, you have good intentions, and we appreciate that a lot. And you're very transparent about when things are going well or things are not going that well. So that was also learning for me to be like, okay, well, maybe I don't suck fully at this job, and maybe these are the things.
That's great feedback to get from somebody, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and maybe these are things that I need to be looking for when trying to hire or choose somebody to help me with technical leadership.
Right, so understanding what the people in your teams actually valued about the leadership was a crucial moment for you.
Right, and I think from that moment on, I tried to be very opportunistic too and be like, hey, if my goal here is to build the best engineering organization I can and make the best company that I can. So that means that even if I don't love doing this, if at this particular moment I need to do more management, I should be doing more management. If I need to do more technical job work because people are stuck, I'll do that. If I need to be spending most of my time hiring, I'll do that. If I need to spend most of my time talking with customers, I'll do that, right? So my job became more of like whatever I need to do that I can do to unblock the organization. And at some point even became helping other orgs with the learnings that I had, because engineering, our mission is helping developers make more money. So we're a very engineering heavy organization, and culturally too. And my co-founder is also an engineer. So we are the org that is more farther ahead. So there's a lot of learnings that we can apply to other parts of the org. So that's something that I've spent my time a lot with, just working with other leaders at the company, helping them with my learnings, making sure that they don't make the same mistakes that I made.
Yeah, because I can imagine that your customers also are mostly in that sort of same space, developers,
yes,
developer teams, etc. Because that's often where the reason why they turn to RevenueCat, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so what was it sort of surprised you? Because it's clearly at some point you've recruited external leaders and it's left a sour taste by the sounds of it. So what was sort of some of the experience of recruiting leaders who were not the best ones in your experience that made you sort of think, okay, I'm better looking for folks from the inside rather than trying to recruit leaders in from the outside?
I think right now the strategy is kind of both. I think we have both internal people that didn't want to get into management but have been proven to be really good. Those are able to do at least the initial stages of the role really well because they already have a reputation in the company and people respect them and they can help with the delivery and they have the institutional knowledge. So that's really good. And then we hire people externally that maybe don't have the institutional knowledge, but they're really good at other things such as hiring, firing, performance management. And if you combine those people together, then they learn from each other and it can work real well. I don't think for us the other extremes work, right? Like only having people that are internal or only people that are external. I think one of the mistakes or early learnings from 2020, 2021 was that the industry was a lot of focus on like the engineering manager as a coach. And they were like, even there were people that would even feel insulted if they had like a technical screen in the interview process because they were like, oh, that's not my job. I shouldn't be able to do that. And I don't know, like maybe it works for certain companies, but for ours it doesn't, because what ends up happening is that I think if you hire really well, of course, there's always going to be some personal things and things to talk about the one-on-one and some, I don't know, career growth conversation and things like that. But if the team is really good, most of the times you're going to be talking about delivery and shipping. And if you're not that technical enough or you don't understand the product that well, you end up, no matter if you don't do it intentional, you're going to end up becoming a bottleneck. And you're going to just be somebody talking with people and sending messages, and there's going to be some noise with that conversation, and especially if you're working in an environment like ours that is remote. So yeah, I guess those were the lessons, right? Is that some people, the extreme was somebody becomes an engineering manager, becomes a bottleneck. But the average scenario is that yes, this person is not a bottleneck, but it's just fine. It's just there doing something, but it's not really a lever for the rest of the team to be a lot more productive and achieve the things that they want to achieve. And it becomes really obvious when we have somebody that is great and actually is a force multiplier to the team.
Right, because they basically help get code shipped, they help get product out the door, rather than just being a middle person, the administrative kind of leader.
Right. So the expectation for me right now, well, it's changing with AI, obviously, but I think the original expectation is that you are not expected to be writing code, but you should be able to do it really well, essentially.
So all ex-engineers then?
Yes, that's kind of that's a profile.
So one of the things you said is that your superpower is hiring people better than yourself.
Yeah, that's what I try. That's what I try at least, yeah.
Because you seem to be somebody who's very rounded, who's done the job. As you said, you dive into the details, you've learned things the hard way. So how exactly then do you go find out people who can improve on that? That's a pretty tough call, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's a lot, because then at some point you need to make sure that the team who is going to be doing most of the hiring are doing a good job and they're calibrated and all of those things. So it takes a long time to do this, I think, and it's a good pushback that I got in the past, which was, okay, well, if we're always going to be hiring people better than us, that doesn't mean that we're never going to be able to hire people that are more junior than us. And that's a good way of thinking about it, but the way I push back is like, not really. What you should be thinking about is like, just look at this person's experience and look at yourself when you have that experience. And if you feel like that person is impressive to you when you adjust the experience, then we should hire. If that person is not that impressive, then it means that you probably were better at that stage, and it probably doesn't make sense that it's not gonna make the bar higher. So that's kind of how we think about it.
So calibrating against your own level of experience at the point where the candidate is at is a way of sort of setting the benchmark then.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, because like, I don't know, I mean, with AI, obviously with the internet back in my days, but now with AI, it's like, it's so much more impressive what people can get done by themselves, right?
It's quite a multiplier, isn't it?
Yeah. It's mind-blowing.
How is AI changing your team? Because I mean, we mentioned it several times already, but and the level of change that people are going through right now, there are some people who are terrified of it because it feels like a threat. There are some people who are sort of incredibly energized by it because look how much I can get done and I can go sprinting ahead of the rest of my team. And there are other organizations where the leadership are distinctly concerned about leaving people behind.
Yeah.
Where do you fall on this spectrum?
I think one thing that worked really well for us was the fact that I tried culturally to build a team that was very pragmatic and not dogmatic about technology in general. So they were not thinking, they're not always thinking like, oh, let's use this technology because it's the one that I heard in the last conference and I've heard this is the best one, whatever. No, it's like, if we can adapt it and it makes sense, we'll do it. Otherwise, we don't. And with AI, it was kind of that way. Like, I think a combination of two things. One, if our customers were using AI, so our engineers were seeing how people were building apps with AI and they were actually pretty decent and were making money. So I was already like, okay, maybe there's something here. And then they were very curious about it. And luckily, people have been very curious and sharing the knowledge, and we've been using it since pretty much the beginning. And now, again, it's good because people have been accessing the tools and realizing, okay, this works really well for us, or this doesn't. And they've been experimenting and learning from each other organically. So it was amazing. The way I'm thinking about it in terms of org structure is that right now I'm building smaller teams, essentially. So before, like, obviously, when the company used to be 5 people, we were moving really fast. Like, the sprint cycles were 1 day or 1 week maximum because there's not a lot of coordination that you need to do, right? However, at some point, you're doing more ambitious stuff, you need bigger teams, and then there's a lot of coordination, which also becomes a lot trickier in a remote environment with multiple time zones. So,
indeed.
But now, that doesn't need to be the case anymore because you don't need a team with like 3 backend engineers, 3 front-end engineers, SDK, whatever. No, it can be a team of 2-3 people, and they can be moving really fast independently. And then maybe there's a team lead or tech lead that interacts with the other teams when there needs to be some collaboration, but it's just like 2-3 people talking with each other and not 8 or 12 people in a room trying to make consensus-based decision that just slows down the whole process. So yeah, that's more or less how I'm thinking about it, and it's worked pretty well. Obviously, there's also some downsides, right? Because if the teams are very small, then when there's somebody goes on vacation or there's a parental leave, that team goes slower. But I think the parallelism level that we can hit is very high, and we're shipping a lot more things in parallel, which is pretty good. And also another side effect of this is that then it becomes a lot more obvious when people are not at the level, right? If you cannot hide
in a team of three,
under the best performers because the team is too big, right? When there's 2 or 3 people, the output is very obvious.
Yeah. And one of the things I've been seeing is that team size, somewhere between 2 and 3. I mean, there's one set of people who are sort of saying, well, 4, half of the old pizza team is the ideal size.
Yeah.
And there's another group who are sort of saying, well, 2 is the ideal team size. But there's a growing number of people who are sort of sitting somewhere around about 3. But the thing that's really obvious now is that team sizes have collapsed.
Yeah.
Is that something you think is going to be like now it's going to still stick for the next several years like that? Or do you think this is still changing, still evolving?
I think so. I also think, again, where everybody's talking about the like $1 billion company or whatever, maybe. But I also think that there at some point, even if you have a lot of agents, you just need to talk with somebody else to make a decision, or also like to do more things in parallel. There's a limit of what agents can do in parallel, I guess, and how to coordinate them. One side effect, though, that I'm seeing is that it's a good time for the product-oriented engineer or the idea person or whatever, because now the slowest part of the process, which was writing the code, testing it, debugging it, is no longer the case. So we actually have seen people that were really good product folks, but maybe there were engineers that really like product and design, but maybe they actually didn't love the act of typing the code and doing the writing of the code. And now they're a lot more productive, and their output is so much higher just because that's not part of the equation anymore. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely very interesting times, and for people that really love computers, this is like magic. I do feel like there's people that really love the fact of writing the code and learning about the best good practices of a particular language or a framework, and they might feel that those days are gone. But yeah, I mean, it's a different way. It's a different level of abstraction, I think.
Yeah, this is the way I'm looking at it. It's, we stopped writing in assembly years and years ago. Exactly. We just getting to the point where we're beginning to stop writing in procedural languages, object-oriented languages, etc. The new language is Markdown.
Right.
Love it or hate it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Cool. I mean, in terms of leading the team through that then, because I mean, as somebody who said you didn't love the idea of being a leader and became them by mistake, and now, you're leading leaders through this transition. Have you found it gets any easier over time?
I think the problems are different. And I think maybe I'm now combining the fact that I'm also a founder and not necessarily the CTO. I do think that if I was stuck of doing if I was a hired CTO and that was my only job, then maybe it gets a little bit easier because you also get more experience. However, I need to balance out the company growing and getting to the next stage. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. It's really very difficult for me to split both things, but I wouldn't say it's easier. I think it's always more challenging because as soon as I get good at something, it's very clear that it's time to delegate it, right? Because I need to build an organization that as much as possible is not dependent on me, even though, frankly, it's never the case, or I've never got into that point. But at least there's a lot of things that I was the only person that I could do that are no longer the case. So I think that's a win, right? Like I used to be the only person that was writing code. I used to be the only person that knew about in-app subscriptions. And I'm definitely not the most expert in in-app subscription at the company anymore. I don't even know how a lot of things are deployed or many of the technical things that I used to know perfectly. So that is good, but that doesn't mean that there are other challenges as the company grows. Even just how we organize the teams, how we interact with other teams or product, how we hire in this new era. So there's always new things to be thinking about.
Absolutely. I know we've described the transition as moving from the person who has all the answers to every question to being the person who asks every question.
Pretty much, yeah.
And talking about delegation and organizational structure, one of the things that you set up, which I find quite interesting because it's not that common, is this office of the CTO, which we talked about the last time when we were having a chat. I just want to ask you, where did the inspiration or the idea for that? Perhaps let's step back a bit. Maybe you can explain to folks what is your office of the CTO and how it works, and then sort of can go back a bit of how you got to it.
Yeah, my office of the CTO is essentially right now, 3 very senior engineers that are really good about the 0 to 1, have a lot of institutional knowledge of the company, and that I trust a lot. And they can be deployed to either build new bets, new initiatives that don't belong to a particular team, help with a big project that is stuck or needs some extra resources or particular knowledge, or doing other random things, essentially. That's more or less how I'm thinking about it. They don't need any management, really. They are very, very self-organized, and they need to be able to, they're not going to become managers necessarily, but they need to be able to, if an initiative becomes big, they need to be able to hire 1 or 2 people and give some technical leadership in terms of how to organize them until it finally becomes an official real team with their own engineering manager and stuff. So those are the things that I mostly do. I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. I think the biggest reason why I ended up setting it up was because we got pretty good creating new product teams based on the needs we had. When a product area became too big, we were like, okay, it's very clear that this is like now 2 things. Let's split it and let's use a few people from this team to bootstrap the new team, and then we'll hire and we'll make sure that both teams are now more or less complete. And we were pretty good about those team splits and creating new teams. I think the biggest problem was when we had a new crazy idea or a new crazy bet and was like, okay, who's going to do this? And you can easily say, okay, you recruit a couple of people and do it for 1 or 2 months, then it destabilizes the whole thing. And at the same time, there was another problem, which is like, yes, people are excited to build new things, but not everybody, especially if you're like in the middle of your career, or maybe you're senior, but not that senior, you're not that excited to build something really quickly that you might have to fully throw away and then have nothing to prove, right? And we wanted some people that were really good at this and didn't have any attachment or ego to, okay, let's build something. And if it works out really well, then somebody else will probably rewrite it or whatever. But if it doesn't work, it's fine. We'll throw it away. It's not the end of it. So there's
a specific kind of mentality that goes with this role as well, then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an expectation too. And that's also one of those things that, because at the beginning when it was presented, some people were like, oh my God, everybody's want to be part of it. But then they realized like, well, maybe not, because we lacked out, honestly, that the initial ideas that we had, they're all working. So we're going to keep doing them. But now that's the other thing. Like now, as soon as it gets good, they're going to be moved to a different project. So they're not going to be able to fully see the whole thing through. So you need to be okay with that. And you also need to be okay with the fact that, you might actually have to do a little bit of like light management and hire people and give them feedback. Or maybe we hire somebody really quickly and we realize very quickly that they don't work out and we might have to terminate them. So then the other engineers were like, well, maybe this is not for me necessarily. So
right. So it isn't viewed as like the elite A team that you want to join because everyone wants to be measured against it.
Not necessarily, no.
Right. And, in terms of picking...
Personally, that's the other thing. Personally, I thought it was going to be an opportunity for me to get closer to the medal again. That hasn't been the case, though. That hasn't been the case. Maybe because they've
worked out that way.
Maybe because they've been really independent too, and they've been able to achieve many of the things without a lot of input. But yeah, maybe someday. I've been doing a lot of technical stuff now with AI because what I'm trying to do is not put myself into the critical path and become the bottleneck for something to be released. So
yeah, I can understand that. Okay, so not wanting to do that means that you're not necessarily the right person to be in your own office, the CTO, but sort of operating as an almost completely independent operator alongside even that.
Yeah, I'd say that.
And in terms of, from where the person who knows all the questions, the ones who are sort of almost like special forces, really jumping around the organization and solving problems as they come up or even before they appear. How do you select the people in that team? Are they the kind of people you've been working with them for years and years? Or is there some sort of criteria that you go, okay, this is the kind of mentality and character that's the right person for this?
Right now, obviously, yes, they need to be at a certain level. For that certain level, you need to essentially have some not only performance, but cultural alignment features.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's people that there's very high trust. In fact, like I usually don't do one-on-ones with them, and unless there's something important, and they need to ask for a one-on-one. Essentially, what I do is that I meet with them once a week, the three of them. It's agenda driven. It's 30 minutes only, and most of the times we always finish earlier, and it's very, very, very very structured. It's like, okay, this is what we got done. These are the blockers. These are the things that maybe we need to make a decision on, or what do you think? And
it's very efficient and functional.
Very efficient, yeah. Because otherwise it would have been like adding like 3 new direct reports to me and having to have one-on-ones, and it would have been a lot more work. But yeah, and we haven't expanded it yet. We might soon, and then we'll see how we do it. But right now, it's only been 3 people.
Well, I'm always fascinated with these special teams. Maybe it's because I work with special forces for a while. But one of the things I'd like to just top onto for a while is the sort of the rules or the key things that you run the rest of your teams by, because you have quite a few of them. And we talked about sort of 5 key principles really that you run teams by. Do you want to just sort of walk us through that and tell us why those are the most important things for you as you lead your teams?
Yeah, these are coming more or less, and I try to adapt our own company values, which again, at the beginning, they started very, very, very engineering oriented, but we made them more generic so that other teams really understand it. But yeah, they are also interconnected, right? We try to make them cohesive, makes sense. The first one is always be shipping, which means like trying to replicate the early days of like, if we can ship something that a user can use right away, don't wait. Don't plan it for a quarter. Let's do it today. Like, even if you're like, a great example of this would be, I'm working on something, I'm planning for something, but then something that can unblock a customer right now and takes 5-10 minutes to build. Don't wait until 3 days from now. Do it now, because it compounds, right? And don't wait until next week. Every day counts. And a startup is essentially, you're running against, like, you're trying to make sure that you accomplish a lot of things before you run out of money. So the more things that you can do early and that they compound and the users see as valuable, the better. That's number one. The second one is customer obsession, which is, again, related, but let's make sure that what you build is something that is for the customers, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Why would you be building it, even if it's like cool technology? If nobody's going to use it, it doesn't make any sense. And it's not that they're always right, but listen to them and make sure that you validate the things that you're building, because otherwise there's no point, right? And a good example of customer obsession, I'll always be shipping, would be try to always don't plan for something to be built in, like, to be shipped or launched 3 months from now. Like, think about what's the minimum amount of product that you can ship today or this week that can add some value and you can get feedback right away. Because that's how you build a great product, by showing them and them starting using them, and then you realize, okay, there's are gaps. Because otherwise, unavoidably, you're going to end up building something that is over-engineered, that you thought was a great product, but in fact, you realize that you actually wasted 2 months because the simplest version would have solved the problem already. Number 3 is build a winning team. We've talked about this. I try to make sure that I hire better people than me. The way I put it sometimes is like, the worst person at RevenueCat has already been hired. So try to aim for hiring better people constantly, because that's how we all grow. And it's even exciting for the early employees, because they can provide the institutional knowledge. But again, if we hire people that are better, they can keep learning technically in other areas. Pragmatism.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I like that.
Yeah. Number 4 is pragmatism, which is the opposite of being dogmatic. It's essentially, like, understand that the technical choices and the things that you do are for a reason, and they are not because they're trendy or because you heard somewhere in a conference that, or somebody on Twitter is saying that model view controller is not testable, therefore you need to be using this architecture or this database or whatever. No, like, look at it and it's like, oh, do we have this problem? Are we going to have this problem? Does it make sense that we try this out? Yes. Otherwise, yes. You can stick with the old proven technology that works really well and we know really well and we're experienced. And then the last one, which I think is more unique to our particular scenario, is that you should assume that nothing is innocuous, because we're critical infrastructure. What that means is that a little bit of pessimism helps, because especially with like the smallest pull requests, right? Because for us,
so even if it looks small, you're going to be suspicious of it.
Actually, most of the biggest mistakes that we've ever made were the small ones, right? Because if it's a big, if it's a big code change, everybody looks at it with a magnifying glass, and we're like reviewing and testing it really well. Sometimes it's like, oh, look at this. It's a one-liner. It only fixes this small edge case, whatever. And then people might rubber stamp the pull request, and then it brings down the whole server, right? So those are the ones that need to be looked at very carefully, and just be paranoid about like, okay, if I ship this, what could break in the worst case scenario? And then, of course, obviously we need a lot of automations and a lot of things, CI, CD, to make sure that these mistakes don't happen. But it doesn't hurt to be extremely paranoid about the changes that you're making and how they can affect negatively users. So yeah, those are the 5.
And how would you apply that when it's not applied to code then?
Do you mean outside of engineering or inside of engineering?
I mean, are these values specific to engineering, or are they applied across the business?
This, I would say, more specific to engineering. I think the always be shipping, customer obsession, these are all company values. Then we have 2 or 3 others that also apply to engineering, but they're a little bit more generic. But build a willing team is also part of the culture, but it's not. Own it is another one that I didn't say specifically, but that's another company value that we have, which means that own it, right? Like an example is like always be shipping. You can ship on a Friday. It's actually part of the culture. It's fine. You can ship on a Friday, but don't ship on a Friday and just leave and not have don't check anything, don't leave any instruction on how to roll back, or like don't communicate with each other. That is really bad. But if you ship something and it works great, or it breaks and then you're there helping out how to roll it back or whatever, then yeah, you own what you do, essentially. Like not making mistakes.
So be accountable even though you're taking a risk. Yeah. Cool. And so particularly that last one, assume nothing is innocuous, sounds like it's come out of some hard-won experience. So was there a particular point at which you thought, okay, we can no longer dismiss these little things?
I mean, there's many. And I think, we have again, very strong engineering culture. So we try to do post-mortems and make sure that if we make one mistake, it never happens again. And it's not enough of like, oh, we made this mistake, we learn. No, it needs to be enforced somehow. Like we need to make sure that a new employee that doesn't come with the knowledge cannot make the same mistake again, right? It could be as simple as like, oh, you cannot add an index, a non-concurrent index to a live table because it's gonna slow down the server. Well, it's just not like we educate people. It has to be like, it cannot let you write that code or push that code. But yeah, I think this one was important to add because we have really good engineers, but maybe they come from a different environment that is not critical infrastructure and it's not that important. Maybe they realize always be shipping, it means that I need to like move really fast. And maybe in a different org, it doesn't matter if something is broken because there's not that much concurrency, or it takes a while until people see it, or they have a dedicated QA team and then they catch it. That's not our case. So we need to make sure I added it so that people really understand that that's something that's a way for us of operating.
Nice. Cool. And it seems to me that with that set in place, you've got probably a fairly robust engineering approach and engineering culture. Is there anything that you would say that is unique about the RevenueCat engineering culture that you wouldn't find most other places? I mean, apart from the fact that it's critical infrastructure.
I don't know. I think overall we're pretty unique for many, many reasons, and the people that we've hired. I think the combination of being fully remote is an interesting one because it has advantages and disadvantages, obviously. Early communication and speed at the beginning might be a lot slower, and you also need to build processes to make it work. You need to communicate really well. But once it's working okay and you have critical mass, originally at the beginning, one super easy example was that I would have to stay up very late, and the person in Taiwan would have to wake up very early just to have like an hour of overlap, and then that person would work for like 7 hours by themselves, pretty much. Now that doesn't happen anymore because we have so much overlap that there's always online, there's somebody always on Slack. And once you have that, then you have pretty cool things like most likely if there's an incident or there's an alarm or something going off, there's probably going to be somebody working, even if it's a Sunday for you, might be Monday already in Australia or Taiwan, so they might pick it up before you do and you're not woken up. So those are cool side effects of remote in different time zones for critical infrastructure. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would say it's a pretty interesting culture too in general. We try, as I said, we try to hire. I always wanted to hire fewer people that I loved working with instead of like having very, very, very big teams. And yeah, that's more or less how I've been thinking about building the teams.
That's a great approach. And by the sounds of it, the teams are only getting smaller, not bigger.
Yeah.
Miguel, thank you very much. I've got to ask you, what does a really good day off look like for you when you're not in front of the technology?
Well, it's a good day off. Oh, it's a hard question because I mean, as a founder, you're constantly thinking about this, right? I'm not gonna lie.
You never fully switch off.
There's always something, but yeah, the way I like disconnecting is, well, obviously the family helps a lot. And now I have 3-year-old twins that keep me very busy when I'm not with a computer.
I can imagine.
Surfing was a big thing because it's one of the only things that I can still do where I'm fully disconnected and not having. I still have the Apple Watch, so if something really bad happens, I will know. But I'm not actively scrolling or looking at the Slack or anything like that.
Yeah,
and it's my type of meditation. But now it's good because the kids are starting to enjoy going to the beach too. So it's I can kind of do both a little bit. So that's helping out.
Awesome. And Miguel, if people want to continue the conversation with you, how can people get hold of you? Yeah,
on Twitter. That's probably where I'm spending X, the everything app. That's where I'm spending most of my time, also because it's where most of our customers and actually a lot of people that we've hired come from. I would say that's the easiest, but also I have a blog. I don't write that often, but in my blog, which is my name.es, you can see my contact info and my email and on that. I'm busy, but I'm always trying to help if I can.
Excellent. It's been absolutely fantastic to speak to you today, Miguel. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the whole episode. I appreciate your time. So just before you go, I'd like to ask you for a favor in return for putting together this episode of the CTO Playbook for you. Please share the episode with just one person who will appreciate it. Wherever you're listening, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or another platform, sharing the episode will help more CTOs find the podcast and enable me to create more great content. Remember that you can find more information on the CTOplaybook.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the CTO Playbook.